Well, let me emphasize something. I talked about 2,000 dead Americans each year at the hands of illegal aliens. The overall situation is much more life-threatening than that. Our porous southern border allows all sorts of narcotics to come into America, which each year result in over 30,000 dead Americans from overdoses. So it's not just the illegal aliens coming into our country, it's also the illegal narcotics that are imported across our southern border that result in another 30+ thousand dead Americans each year. And what is happening is not accidental. It is by design, because the socialists have figured out that they don't like the votes of American citizens, Americans who were born here, raised here, know something about our foundational principles. And the best way for these socialists to win elections is to import individuals who are not as familiar with the foundational principles that have combined to make us the greatest nation in world history, who are much more likely to live off the government dole and thus much more likely to be in the hip pocket of socialist Democrats on election day. It's all a pure power play for a political partisan gain.
You know, in addition to the cartels, bringing drugs in this country, we also have to talk about the human trafficking issue, specifically as it relates to minors, because there's been this incentive created for coyotes and human smugglers to now bring kids with them. Migrant border crossings have spiked sharply since Biden took office, and according to CNN's reporting here, more than 3,000 unaccompanied migrant children are currently in U.S. Customs and Border Patrol custody. So they've created this incentive. You and I both know that coyotes now know, once again, as was the case under the Obama administration, that there is an incentive for them to bring children across the border with them.
There is a long trail of human tragedy behind what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are foisting on the American people. There is also an economic hardship. The cost to American taxpayers at the city, county, state, and federal level, net tax loss, is estimated to be in the neighborhood of $200 billion per year. That's money that could have gone to help Americans, but now it's going to help illegal aliens. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. You've also got wage suppression because employers can hire cheap illegal alien labor rather than American citizens. You also have American citizens who are losing job opportunities because those illegal aliens are willing to work at cut rate wages. So there are a whole bunch of compounding effects on the American population, and almost all of them are bad. And as a consequence, struggling American families are suffering.
Now, we've been going back and forth with the Department of Homeland Security for a couple of days trying to get some better answers as to what's going on down there. You and I know that the Trump administration allowed news media access to these facilities. The Biden administration doesn't want to do that. But here's their statement that they provided to us. Addressing the flow of unaccompanied children crossing our southwest border is an important priority of this administration and DHS. And here's the part that concerns me. Quote, it requires a whole of government coordinated and sustained response. They also provided us with some screenshots of their stats here, but they didn't give us any photos of their facilities. And anytime I hear the words, a whole of government coordinated sustained response, that's not really designed to solve the problem. That's designed to spend more money on an issue to keep it going, to sustain it, because they seem to like this, what's happening on the southern border.
Well, again, keep in mind what I mentioned earlier. This is all for pure partisan, very crass, very risky political gain. It's all about getting votes. And the data over the years has established that if the Socialist Democrats can, in fact, give amnesty and citizenship to all illegal aliens in America, a bedrock campaign promise of Joe Biden on October 22nd at the nationally televised debate out of Nashville, Tennessee, if they can do that, then by golly, they have hit the voter jackpot, and they believe that they will be ensconced in power for decades to come and be able to impose their socialist dictatorial will on the American people, with American people having no recourse, not only because of voter fraud and election theft, on the one hand, with H.R. 1, which would legitimize all of that illegal conduct, what is illegal now, but also, on the other hand, because of the importation of tens of millions of voters who are on welfare, on the one hand, to a much larger degree than American-born citizens, and on the other hand, are much more likely to vote Socialist Democrat for a variety of other reasons.
Well, I got one more question for you on this.
That's the situation we're facing.
I got one more question for you on this, and then another question I want to ask you about Eric Swalwell after that. We got 2 minutes left here real quick. But, I think a lot of people's minds were changed on this after the pandemic, and it became clear to a lot of people with common sense that you got to shut down the border sometime, even though you might be worried about being called a racist. But, I got to think about Jeff Sessions as well. You know, he was recently quoted in an article with Reuters saying it was unfortunate that migrant children were separated from their families. But he knows now, like a lot of people do, that if you open the borders and you create this incentive, you're only going to have more kids in detention centers in this country. Does Jeff Sessions deserve an apology? You know, some people in the media blasted him for quoting the Bible when he was talking about a zero tolerance policy, but we know that the design of that policy was to provide, you know, to create a disincentive for these people to come.
Well, let me be real clear about this for just a moment. The reason there was a family separation policy was because Democrat forces settled Bill Clinton, and if I recall correctly, then Attorney General Janet Reno, settled this issue, and it required that settlement agreement, Voices on America, through the judiciary, as opposed through statutory means through the United States Congress and our elected representatives, required the separation of children from the adults. So that's why you saw the separation under George Bush, under Barack Obama, under Donald Trump, and to some degree now under Joe Biden.